What's up, Wizards? It's Deb from Mtg, and I got Igby with me today, but shh, he's sleeping. He has no idea what's going on. Now, I got some more Kaldheim previews for you today. That's why you come. We got a couple of new One-Drop Elves, finally, a whole batch of awesome new Sagas to talk about, and a zombie that reanimates at instant speed. And I know you want to get to it, so let's do it. So let's start by looking at those One-Drop Elves. We got Duskwielder and Jasper Sentinel today. I think Duskwielder is definitely the less impressive of the two, so I'm going to start with that. It's just 1 black mana for a 1/2 Elf Berserker with Boast 1. Target opponent loses 1 life, you gain 1 life. So you could kind of look at this in a sideways manner as like a 1 mana 2 power thing, but you have to sink extra mana into it to get that out of it. Yeah, sometimes this will be guaranteed damage and you just have extra mana laying around. That can be okay, especially in the mid game. This isn't completely invalidated, it's still doing some damage, but all things considered, it's not really a great looking creature, especially in comparison to Jasper Sentinel. This is just 1 green mana for a 1/2 elf rogue with reach, and you can tap it and tap an untapped creature you control, not an elf, a creature you control, to add 1 mana of any color. So this is not Gilded Goose, and it's obviously not Llanowar Elves or anything, but if you have even 1 other creature on the battlefield, you can tap this and that creature for mana, and that's going to be pretty decent in the Elves deck, especially in Standard where we don't have things like Llanowar Elves in the 1-drop slot. So in a deck like Elves that plays a ton of 1 and 2-drop creatures, this is going to be great for powering out extra mana and getting like Tyvar on turn 3. So I think the Elves deck will definitely play this, even though it does look slightly subpar. All the Elves deck wanted was a decent, serviceable 1-drop, and they've got it in the form of Jasper Sentinel. I'm not too sure it's going to end up playing Duskwielder, but Jasper Sentinel is almost a definite. Now, we did see another couple of interesting uncommons today that I think are definitely worth pointing out. Clarion Spirit looks cool, and so does Avalanche Caller. This doesn't look like much at first glance, but it might be a finisher for the snow deck. 1 and a blue for a 1/3 snow human wizard. You can pay 2 to have target snow land you control become a 4/4 elemental creature with haste and hexproof until EOT, and it's still a land. I think especially in Limited, this looks really good for Snow decks, but even in Standard, I kind of wouldn't be surprised if the Snow decks were forced to run a copy or 2 of this. It's a decent 2-drop for them, and they don't really have a whole lot of decent 2-drops in the Snow deck so far. And if you are able to control the board state and kill a couple of things and leave your opponent's side of the board naked, then suddenly, if you just have 3 mana, effectively, 2 to activate, and then, a land to swing with that's untapped, then suddenly 4 damage a turn isn't bad. And once you have effectively 6 lands open, then dealing 8 a turn ain't bad either, so long again as you can control the board states. So this isn't terrible, and there are going to be board states it's not particularly good on, but on some board states, this can be really good, especially against control decks that don't play a whole lot of creatures. I do like that it gives the land hexproof, and no, your opponent can't, target the land with a Heartless Act or something while the ability's on the stack, because the land's not a creature yet. And by the time the land is a creature that you can target with a Heartless Act, it will have hexproof. So I think hexproof really helps push this card into constructed playability, but I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't show up either. All I'm saying is that I kind of like this as a mana sink in the late and mid game for the Snow decks, and again, they don't really have a whole lot of desirable 2-drops, so this might just be all they really have access to. A Clarion Spirit I only bring up because I need to clarify that this is not really a great Magic card. It's not a bad Magic card, don't get me wrong, but I see a lot of people comparing it to Young Pyromancer. It's nowhere even close to Young Pyromancer. I do like that it makes flyers, I need to point that out. That's really cool, but at the same time, it's only going to trigger once per turn. At least twice per turn cycle sometimes, as long as you built your deck with probably a lot of blue cheap card drawing spells, if I had to guess. But this reminds me more of a Valiant Rescuer or Worthy Knight or something. You could even make the case that it's not as good as Worthy Knight because it's never going to trigger more than 1 time in a turn. So I'm just not a huge fan of this for constructed Magic, especially at 2 toughness. We've really come a long way since Young Pyromancer, and this is just worse than Young Pyromancer, again, to clarify. So again, love that it makes flyers. It's probably going to be a really cool card in Limited, but I'm not really sure it's going to make the jump to Standard. Let's look at Igar, the Freezing Flame next. Reminds me of Chrono Cross, looking for the Frozen Flame. It's 3 mana, 1 a blue and a red for a 3/3 legendary giant wizard. And whenever a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls is dealt excess damage, if a giant wizard or spell you control dealt damage to it this turn, draw a card. Just before I put the card on the screen, I want to let you know that Igby's still doing okay. He's still asleep, completely oblivious. Look at the baby. But anyway, here's Igar right here, looking pretty stout. And I love the Izzet art, by the way. Isn't Izzet art just the best art? at all times. But the card looks okay, even though it is kind of removal bait. Like half the other cards I've talked about in the set so far, they're really getting back to fair Magic. Oh wait, Igby's up. There he is. You see his face and his eyes? He's so cute. I love you, Igby. You're just a good man. You're a very good man, my dude. But anyway, Igar again? Yeah, let's look at Igar real quick. Igar, because Igby's coming down here anyway. But Igar looks all right to me, but he doesn't do anything the turn he enters the battlefield. I feel like a broken record this set. I know you're probably getting frustrated with that phrase, but it does matter, especially in the context of modern day standard Magic. A card really needs to create some value for you when it enters the battlefield, or be extremely cheap, like Edgewall Innkeeper, right? But this ain't those things. It's neither of those things. But if you do play it on turn 3, and then you decide to stomp an Edgewall Innkeeper on the next turn or something, and it deals excess damage, you draw a card. That's pretty good. Maybe on the turn that you play it, you swing in with a giant or two, and it does excess damage to the creature blocking it, or the planeswalker it's attacking into, and then you get to draw a card. So this could feasibly have some effect on the battlefield the turn it enters play, but even then, if your opponent has instant speed removal, they'll use it before you get to your attack step. So I guess there's also that. I guess dies to removal isn't the best argument in the world, but historically, at least the last few years of Magic, a creature really needs to do something super impactful the turn it enters the battlefield, and it needs to do it on curve, and I'm just not sure that this is going to do that most of the time, but I still like it. If it sits around for even more than one turn, then it's probably going to draw you a card, or two, or even three for that matter, because you can draw multiple cards off of it in the course of a turn. So I like this. I think it's a cool card advantage piece for the Giants decks, and they definitely need that, but is it a little too expensive? I'm not too sure. The Giants decks are going to play it regardless because it's a 3-drop giant. And aside from Bone Crusher, what do we have? Crystalline Giant as a 3-drop giant? I don't think they want to play that card. So I think they'd much rather play this that generates card advantage if left unchecked. And I think they will play it, but will it be good enough to make Giants a real deck? I'm still not sure. But speaking of making Giants a real deck, here's a Song of Ice and Fire. Oh, excuse me, it's a Battle of Frost and Fire here. It's 5 mana, 3 blue, and a red for a Saga. On Chapter 1, it deals 4 damage to each non-giant creature and each planeswalker. On Chapter 2, you scry 3. And on Chapter 3, whenever you cast a spell with converted mana cost 5 or greater this turn, draw 2 cards and then discard a card. So I'm not sure if this makes Giants a real deck, or if it just makes Jeskai Yorion a real deck, right? Because note that Yorion blinks this to pretty good effect. It survives the Storm's Wrath effect. And it also triggers the 3rd chapter. So good for yo-yo decks, and I think we've all had enough of Yorion, but at least maybe it'll be a different flavor. It'll be Jeskai this time around. But you can blink this Saga to good effect with any number of things in Standard right now. But is it good enough? Again, the Giants is the real question here. Is it good enough for Giants to make it? I'm not sure. This misses Bone Crusher Giant in other decks, as well as Lovestruck Beast. It doesn't kill Lovestruck Beasts. It doesn't kill like Feasting Troll Kings, I guess, for what that's worth. But it kills like most creatures in most decks, you know. Altogether, I do like this Saga. I like a Saga that has a Wrath effect on the 1st chapter. That seems good. And then on the 2nd chapter, Scrying 3 seems at least okay, right? Scrying 3 is a lot of scries. And then the next chapter, not too bad at all. You get to draw some cards, and it'll proc more than once if you can somehow cast like 2 things with converted mana cost 5 or greater. So this isn't terrible, obviously. It's card advantage, it's scrying, and it's a Wrath effect all in the same card. And obviously it's a one-sided Wrath effect for Giants decks against, rogues and mono white and mono red and all the other, aggro-based decks in the format that aren't necessarily named Gruul aggro. However, this is still going to hit all their Edgewall Innkeepers. It's going to hit their Kazandu Mammoths and their Brushfire Elementals and stuff. So even against Gruul, this isn't entirely blank or anything. Against Control, it's not great, but I guess it's not dead against Control either. Scrying 3 and then drawing some cards, pretty fine. So I kind of like this almost everywhere, and it's yet another solid piece for the Giants deck. But does it line up with the format outside of a vacuum? That remains to be seen. But up next, let's look at Bears of Littjara. This is 3 mana, 1 a green and a blue for a Saga. On Chapter 1, you create a 2/2 Shapeshifter creature token with Changeling. On Chapter 2, any number of target Shapeshifter creatures you control have base power and toughness 4/4. Note that that does not say until end of turn. On Chapter 3, you choose a target creature or planeswalker. Each creature with power 4 or more that you control deals damage equal to its power to that permanent. So a bite effect. Sorry I'm not showing my face here, but this Saga I have to translate, and I can't do that with only half of the screen. So I have to use the entire screen to translate a Saga, and I apologize for that. But I see a lot of people freaking out about this card today, and I'm not actually sure that it's incredible, although I do think it's a good Magic card. Now, I will say, if they're able to kill the Changeling token before your next turn rolls around, you're really not going to get a whole lot of value off of this card most times unless you are able to play a Changeling 2-drop. And if you were able to play a Changeling 2-drop, suddenly the card is quite good. So that's not bad. But if your opponent is able to take care of the 2/2 the card makes and you're naked otherwise, the card becomes effectively completely blank. Until then. But I guess on the turn after you play it, you could play a 4/4 like Questing Beast or something, and then on turn 5 you still get this last effect, which is quite good. This bite effect, which I've seen people say breaks the color pie. No, Simic gets to bite things. Green can bite stuff. It's not a color pie break. Although you could say that a card that makes a body and then makes all your bodies bigger. It's a 3 mana card that makes 4/4 body. And then creates removal a couple of turns later. Seems very good, doesn't it? I mean, it doesn't seem broken to me, at least, but it seems like a playable Magic card. Just so long as you're able to get a 2-drop or a 4-drop that has 4 power. And then, actually make use of the last ability, even if your 2/2 gets blown out. I think the card's good, and I think Simic decks have ways of doing that. Right, playing a 2-drop Changeling or playing a Questing Beast on 4 or something. So I do like this card a lot, and I think it's a great Saga for Simic decks. But this again remains to be seen whether it's truly good, because the play patterns involved with this card, you kind of have to nail them every time, and I'm not sure that you're going to be able to do that in a game of Magic where people actually play interactive elements. So again, we'll see about this card, and the next Saga coming up is actually somewhat comparable to it, all things considered, but I think it's the much better choice, and that's Firja's Punishment, or Firja's Castigation. We're not actually sure yet, but I really like this. This is one of my favorite cards of the day. This is 4 mana, 1, 2 white, and a black for a Saga. For chapter 1, I should say, that was weird, you create a 4/4 Angel Warrior creature token with flying and vigilance. On Chapter 2, until end of turn, angels you control gain tap, destroy target creature with power less than the power of this creature. And on Chapter 3, angels you control gain double strike until end of turn. So just about everything this does is quite good, but it has the same problem as the last Saga, where if you don't have any other angels out and your opponent kills the 4/4 this creates, then suddenly the other chapters don't do anything. You just spent 4 mana for nothing, which is worse than spending 3 mana for nothing, which would be the case with that Simic Saga we just looked at. But I like this a little bit more. You get a 4/4, you get a 4 mana Sarah Angel, which I've already said in a video in the spoiler season I kind of like that rate. A 4 mana Sarah Angel isn't too bad. 4 mana 4/4 flyers haven't been incredible lately, but I guess slapping Vigilance onto it is nice, especially when Chapter 2 is so good with vigilant creatures and so many angels have vigilance. Keep that in mind. Being able to swing in and then before blockers are declared, tap your angels to kill their guys is just crazy. If you have 2 angels on the battlefield and this goes into Chapter 2, there's trouble for your opponent, I would imagine, most of the time. And then Chapter 3 is just going to kill your opponent if they, aren't able to clear the board of angels. If you get through with one of your 4/4 angels, you're dealing 8 to the opponent. And hopefully by that point in the game, you've been able to deal enough damage to them where that just kills them. If you're able to get through with 2 angels, I mean, that's effectively 16 damage if you've got 2 4/4s. So the card just looks really good to me. Again, every chapter is good, but your opponent can stop it on Chapter 1 which means the card might not be amazing, but at the same time, just like the last saga we looked at, if you're able to maintain a board presence outside of the one this card creates, it still does really, really good stuff for you. You know, it creates a 4/4 angel. If your opponent can kill that, if you have other angels out, then it's still left value behind. The saga still does cool stuff, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be one of the better sagas in Standard, especially depending on what you put it in. Again, this could go in like a funky Yorion build that instead of playing Doom Foretold, plays stuff like this to create more value rather than take value away from the opponent. So I really like a lot of stuff about this card, and I love the Orzhov clan, so big fan of this. I hope it does stuff in Standard. I am holding my breath. I was going to say I'm not holding my breath, but I am holding my breath. I think this card looks good enough to go the distance. But up next, the last card of the day, and this is an uncommon. I believe for the first time this season, an uncommon is the quote-unquote best card of the day. This is Narfi, Betrayer King. Despite the funny Pinky in the Brain reference in his name, this is actually a cool-looking card. It's 3, a blue, and a black for a 4/3 legendary snow creature. It's a zombie wizard. Other snow and zombie creatures you control get +1/+1. But the really cool part is that you can pay 3 snow to return this from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Now, the cool thing about that is that you can do it at instant speed. Now, of course, the units play tapped, so you can't, get it back and block with it in the same turn, but you can play it at the end of your opponent's turn, effectively. So it's a really cool control finisher. It's also kind of interesting against decks like Rogues, an uncounterable 4/3 that keeps coming back from the grave, after they've milled it and all that. It seems pretty... We're seeing a lot of Rogue counterplay in this set, from Quakebringer to this, and a couple of other cards, and so... that's always welcome, but card actually looks pretty sweet to me. I know that it's an overcosted 4/3 that you probably don't want to just play naturally, so you want to mill it into your deck somehow, or into your graveyard somehow. But it's worth noting that Mire Triton is a zombie, so this boosts it. Timur Calls the Dead makes zombies and mills you as well, and this boosts those zombies. So it could go really well in just a blue-black zombie thing that plays cards out of the graveyard. I don't know, I'm just kind of spitballing here, but altogether I do like a Lord that reanimates so easily at instant speed. This is really not a very high cost to reanimate this card. And yeah, your deck has to have pretty much all snowlands in it to consistently get this effect. And I've already talked about how I think that's kind of a drawback, a huge drawback right now in and of itself. But at the same time, instant speed recursible 3-mana 4/3 that just keeps coming back until your opponent ECDs it or something. Seems like a somewhat playable Magic card, even without the Lord text stapled to it. But with the Lord text stapled to it, it starts to look really good, not only for zombie decks, but for snow decks too, obviously. But at the end of the day, a 4/3 body might be just a little too low impact to really do anything, especially considering even though it's only 3 mana, you still have to devote mana to getting this back, and you might rather just play spells on your turn than do that. But obviously, if you brick on your top deck and you just draw a land or something, this is better than nothing a lot of the time, unless it's not. Unless you're going to just die that turn. And bringing back a tapped 4/3 from your graveyard does literally nothing. So, I'm trying to kind of temper my expectations. I guess both of them work. Temper my expectations for this card a little bit, but in terms of snow cards, I think it's one of the stronger looking ones that we've gotten so far. And that deck looks like it's really able to bring stuff back from its graveyard. We just saw the Rhyme Staff the other day, so if that's just a grindy, sort of fair Sultai Reanimator recursion deck thing, just plays attrition-based strategies and plays some removal and stuff with all these reanimatable creatures, then I guess that's the kind of deck I'm typically into. But again, this might at the end of the day just not be enough. But that's all the Spurls for today, at least. We got a bunch more of these coming up, and my official exclusive previews in a couple of days. It's on the 16th. Set your calendars for that. I've got a cool one this year, but that's all I can really say. Obviously, I can't give you any more information other than I like my preview cards. So make sure you sub to the channel, hit the bell for the notifications so you get my exclusive preview when it drops, and all these other Kaldheim previews, all the decks when we start making those, all the top 10 lists, top 10 sleepers, top 25 cards. You want to be here for all of that. So sub to the channel. Let's get to 150K. Let's get to 200K. Screw that. Let's get to 200K. If you're not subbed, do it. Aside from that, like the video, and of course, let me know how you felt down there in the comments section about all the analysis down there. Anything that I missed, any of your actions I didn't talk about, combos you're interested in with any of these cards today, get at me down there. Aside from that, if you want to support the channel, hit me up on Patreon. Link in the description. Patreon.com/SBMTG. $1 a month is all I ask, and then you'll be able to vote on what content we do here on the channel, including the first deck techs of Kaldheim Standard. So help me out with that, and if you want to watch me play some Magic or other video games or talk about spoilers or all kinds of fun stuff, go to twitch.tv/SBMTGDev, and there will be my face 2 or 3 nights a week. Probably a lot more than that once Kaldheim actually drops. So get in there, follow me on Twitch, cost you nothing. But aside from that, I guess I'm done for this one. You guys actually got to see Igby this time around. This boy, you guys never, yeah, he's a good buddy. He actually, I think, loves me more than any other cat in the house. So I'm surprised that he's not in videos more often, because he's such a sweet boy. But yeah, you got to see Igby. The rarest cat in the house, I think, who was stuck to my shirt there for a second. So, yeah, you're welcome for that. But anyway, I guess I'm done for this one, so I'll catch you cats later. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love and be kind. You did good, bud. You did so good. Yeah, just a sweet boy.